Sun Tzu is credited with saying that if you know your enemy and you know yourself, you have no reason to fear 100 battles. You know, as white racialists, white nationalists, national socialists, fascists, whatever ist that our guys proclaim to be, we have no shortage of enemies. It's like we are fighting against a Hydra, like Hercules did in the myth. This Hydra has so many different heads that are snapping, biting, and spewing their poisonous fumes in our presence. You know, we have the usual suspects. We have our Western governments, the media, academia. You know, we have our racial enemies. We have our endless hordes of migrants coming over. And we also have many of our own who are our enemies as well. Our cup truly runneth over. Now, the head that I'm going to focus a bit on in this video is what I would consider one of the most cunning, devious, and ultimately depraved heads of the Hydra. And this is the various intelligence agencies. Here in the United States, I'm talking about the CIA, FBI, NSA. In England, you have the MI5, MI6, and of course, the Mossad. Now, what I'm going to talk about in this video is, it's going to be disjointed, rambling. I'm going to be jumping around a bit. And I just wanted to get some of these thoughts out there and to encourage you guys to do some research into these things for yourself. Let's see, for those of you who do not know what Operation Gladio was, it was this idea, and it was the formation of these sort of stay-behind networks in Western Europe after the end of World War II. You see, whenever the Allies had taken over Europe, destroyed Germany, destroyed Italy, they rounded up a lot of these National Socialists that survived the fighting and that were, you know, connected. A lot of these fascists as well down in Italy. And basically they just shot them, made them dig their hole, told them to face the wall. Or in some cases, they decided to co-opt some of these guys. And they would have these, they would form these, they would take the National Socialist or Fascist and they would tell them, you know, basically you can work for us or you can join your friends here in the ground. And a lot of them did end up working. They had these cells all across Western Europe, and there were caches of weapons, money, and in case of the Soviet Union ever invading Western Europe, these guys, these cells in Operation Gladio, they were to lead the resistance against the Soviet Union. You know, this theoretical invasion, it never happened. A lot of times I think this sort of East-West divide is it's a bit of a false dichotomy once you start looking into these things. I learned about Operation Gladio through learning about the Deutro Affair, which Didymus Sumi did. He introduced many of us to that topic. And it ties in with the Deutro Affair, which later in this video I'm going to reveal a little bit about a prominent figure who was named often in the X dossiers. You see, Operation Gladio, at its inception, I would say the OSS had a huge hand in the MI6 or MI5. I'm not sure which incarnation it was at that time period. But they basically set up Operation Gladio, these stay-behind networks. But over time, over the decades, Operation Gladio became something that was much more insidious, to say the least. Now, hold on a second, I'll get a drink of water here. You see, I'm going to make a playlist and it'll be right here. I have made a couple of videos speaking about the Deutro Affair. I've done a stream with John Fashcroft where we read Joel Vanderriden's Beyond Deutro. Recently, we found out, though, that archive.org had recently removed the Beyond the Deutro Affair, the reality of protected child abuse and snuff networks. They completely removed it from their website. Now, it's pretty interesting. I wasn't aware that archive.org would remove material like that, but they did. Thankfully, though, if you know what you're looking for, you can still find it online. I think more people are looking into these things, and I have to give Didymus all the credit for that, because I wouldn't have, heard of it yet, most likely. Well, I could have, but I've basically found out wherever Didymus is looking, it's something that we all need to be looking into. The reason that I think it's important for us to study Operation Gladio and to glean information from it is because, like I said, these intelligence agencies are possibly the most cunning and ruthless and just manipulative heads of the Hydra. You see, basically you could say all of these heads of the Hydra, they're really one entity. These secret societies, the Freemasons, Skull and Bones, all these, it's all one entity basically. When you look and you delve deeper into the connections between all of these different agencies, these different groups, organizations, the family ties that are very prominent in them, I think it's important for us to study Operation Gladio so that we can perhaps get a glimpse and perhaps get a rough idea of how these intelligence agencies, they operate. I think it's worthwhile information, and perhaps sometime in the future we can apply this to our current situation, and we can perhaps, sniff out problems before they arise, or, how to prepare accordingly. Now, I will say I am no expert by any means in any of this subject matter, and I've thought about it really. I think it's you would be extremely hard-pressed to find anybody who is an expert in how these intelligence agencies function without them being a part of the intelligence agency themselves. Alright, first and foremost, we're going to talk about a little bit of what I see as it's just another example of leftist, Marxist smears in otherwise very good academic research. Alright, I mentioned earlier that we were going to talk a little bit about a prominent figure in Belgian society back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, who was implicated often, who was mentioned often in the investigation into the Deutro Affair. You see, there was, if you want to learn more about it, just watch those videos here. Didymus, he also made a couple of videos talking about it. The Deutro Affair was one of the most awful things, that document beyond the Deutro Affair. It's very graphic. You'd have to steel yourself if you were to want to read this. Absolutely horrible. Child abuse, pedophilia, child murder, torture. I mean, when I first read it, it blew my mind. You know, just how evil it is. And, you know, I think evil is a term that is thrown around a bit too loosely in this day and time, but this is what I would consider as being, you know, truly evil. The harming of children. And, you know, in the first video I made about the Deutro Affair, I really just was basically in shock and awe, honestly, that there was such depravity, such evil. And the guy that we're going to talk about, and see, I want to do more with this information in the future. Do a couple of streams on it, perhaps, go more in depth, but the guy I'm talking about, his name was Baron Benoit Debon Voison. He was an intelligence asset, and he was a very prominent figure in what you could call this elite Belgian society. See, the years Operation Gladio, these cells, I believe, were all over Western Europe, in all the different countries. But what's most well known is what happened in Italy with the years of lead, and also what happened in Belgium and the Netherlands. The Deutro Affair, it happened in Belgium. You look at the Gang of Novellus, the Brabant killers. Those guys were also tied to Operation Gladio. And Baron Benoit de Bonvoisin, he was named numerous times by the girls who managed to survive the Deutro Affair and who managed to get their story out in the X dossiers, which were largely discredited, of course, by the Belgian media and law enforcement, the judiciary. There were just only a couple of, I mean, it's just astounding, the cover-up in order to protect a lot of these elite pedophiles and these intelligence assets. Baron, the Black Baron, as he became known after a lot of the rumors of his more depraved actions. And to be honest, he was a sadistic fuck and a horrible person. I mean, he was right there, had his nose in it. Also, Paul Vanden Boyens, who was a Belgian Prime Minister, I believe, for 2 short periods. I think it was in 1968 and 69, and also later in, I believe it was 1977 to 79, somewhere around there. These two men, these two sadistic fucks, pedophiles, were accused by these girls of doing some very horrible things. Torture, sodomizing these young girls, torturing them. I mean, I'm not going to get into it here. But he was known as the Black Baron after a lot of these accusations began to surface, because he allegedly had connections to these underground fascist cells in Belgium, in the Netherlands, and other parts of Europe. I believe thoroughly that he was an intelligence asset, and I have to give Joel van der Ruyden credit in his Beyond the Deutro Affair, because he did point out these fascist connections, but he did say that they could have perhaps been connected, to Operation. He was connected to Operation Gladio. And doing a little bit of simple research, I found out. Now, see, that's a common theme in and it taints a lot of good, genuinely good research that a variety of people have done into the connections and into the family history of the Black Baron. I just did some research before I actually searched for it, started looking for it more. You see, these leftist academics, they portray, they make it want to seem like anyone that, cares about their own people, cares about their nation, it leads to, these just repressed sexual urges and just pedophilia. It's just absolutely mind-blowing to me that this is a glaring oversight that some of these researchers have done. I can imagine, maybe whoever's paying them to do this research, wants them to emphasize this without going below the surface, just barely scratching the surface, when of course there's a lot more to it. I don't doubt, definitely, that the Baron had connections to some of these fascist cells. But to say that the Black Baron was a fascist himself, really, all of us know about the books that the Germans burnt back in the 30s by Magnus Hirschfeld. We know what kind of books those were. Pornography, books on transgenderism, transsexuality, all sorts of just absolutely sexually subversive works. We know these were the kind of books, and these were the kind of things and ideas that the Germans worked so hard to destroy. Yet somehow, anybody that's a fascist, it's just mind-blowing. But just looking at the Baron's family history, I just did a simple Wikipedia research. And if you look, and this is a common thread, a while back, Pat from Surviving Vimerica did a stream with Myth of the 20th Century. You can find a link, I'll put a link to it in the description box, about the years of lead in Italy. And Adam, I believe it was, from the Myth of the 20th Century, during that stream said, whenever we're researching something new, we automatically go to Wikipedia. I do this. I'm sure you do this too. And you look at the list of belligerents during the years of lead. On one side you have the Red Brigade, the left wing, the communist faction. And then on the right wing side you have... drawing a blank here, but you also have on the belligerent side for the right-wing faction the P2 Masonic Lodge. And they always try to make it seem like there's always these secret fascists in our governments. And it's like Didymus said in one of his videos, we would be absolutely tickled to death if there were actually any secret fascists in any Western government. But looking at the Baron's history, I know I'm jumping around a lot here. Baron Benoit Debon Voison. His mother's father was a man by the name of Alexander Galopin. He was an industrialist, had ties to banking in Belgium, and during the German occupation of Belgium, he was declared by the Germans as being the uncrowned king of Belgium. And he was in charge of the wartime industry for Belgium. Well, I shouldn't say it's wartime. Basically, he was responsible for organizing the production. They didn't want the economy. They wanted the economy of Belgium to keep going during the war. And he was basically producing, a lot of civilian goods And this took pressure off of the German economy. You know, they were having to produce civilian goods. They were having to produce, you know, war munitions, all of these things. Belgium did not produce any war munitions for the war effort. But basically, to sum it all up, Alexander Galopin, he was a member of the Société Générale de Belgique, and he was assassinated in 1944 by a radical National Socialist paramilitary group called the Vlog. They assassinated him for, I don't know exactly what all happened, but I would imagine it was certainly some subversive actions that Alexander Galopin had committed, and they had found out about it. They got rid of him, killed him. Here's the Vlog group's emblem, and this is the Baron's grandfather on his mother's side. Now, there was a couple of articles about the Baron's life that I found that were very well researched. I enjoyed reading them and learned quite a bit about this sadistic fuck's family connections. The Baron's father was a man by the name of Pierre Debon Voison, and he was one of the original attendees and probably had a hand in founding the Bilderberg Group. I believe it was in 1952 when they had their first meeting. I think it was. And in this article, the guy, I have to give him a lot of credit, you know. He had the pictures of the rolls of the meetings, and there he was, Pierre Debon Voison. He was involved. He went to, I believe, the first three meetings first three or four from 1952 to 55 or 56. So basically and you know, I have to give the authors of these two articles a lot of credit for doing a lot of this research, but like I said, you know, it's just an example of leftist smear tactics and otherwise good research. I mean, you're telling me that the Baron was a fascist, and yet his father was a pivotal player in the formation of the Bilderberg Group, and his other grandfather was murdered by some true fascists, true National Socialists. You're telling me that the Black Baron is a fascist, yet all these things that his family had done, I mean, really, get the fuck out of here. Get fucking real. You know, it's like Didymus said, you just want to reach through the screen and, you know, shake some sense into these otherwise good researchers. But yeah, that's just an example of some, I don't know if it's a glaring oversight, I don't know. I mean, it's just, I have to give the researchers credit for looking into it and providing us with this information, but you know, it's just, in a way, it's sort of mind-blowing to me. Like I said, I'm not going to reveal too much about the Baron. There's a lot more about him, and like I said, I'm saving that for the future. Anyway, I do not doubt, like I said, that the Baron has connections to some of these fascist groups, and see, this is, I guess, the final point of this video that I want to make. Really, these intelligence agencies, part of the Hydra, one of the heads, a lot of us, myself included, are prone to making this mistake of thinking that these institutions, that these agencies, are completely, you know, left-wing, communist, Western, liberal, democratic, you know. It's easy to make this mistake. But looking at what happened during Operation Gladio, and with the Black Baron, you know, they try to label him as fascist. I don't think he's fascist in the least. I think he was connected See, and that goes back, to controlled opposition, you could say. The old controlled opposition trick. You see, I don't doubt, and there was a case of a guy by the name of Paul Latinus, who was actually executed back in the 80s there in Belgium. I believe he was, I don't know a lot about him, it's hard to find some information, but from what I read, he was murdered by people that was connected to the Black Baron and that Paul Vandenboyens. I believe he was probably a true fascist. See, a lot of these lower level people, which would be like you, me, whoever, we are prone to being manipulated by people who are posing as our leaders, I don't doubt that the Baron had fascist connections, but he certainly was not one of our guys. Definitely not. And these intelligence agencies, they will manipulate and they will use, like say in Italy, the Red Brigade against, the fascists there. They play both sides, both elements of the far left and far right against each other. And it's a strategy of tension. That was a very good documentary that I have to say my friend B1 had posted a while back. It's a very informative thing about documentary about Operation Gladio. You see, these intelligence agencies, they will, like I just said, they will play these two extremes against each other in a strategy of tension. And really, while they are absolutely depraved, disgusting, these intelligence agencies and a lot of the people that work for them, horrible people, should be dealt with, well, probably can't say it, but you can imagine what I would say here. Now, these intelligence agencies, they really have no ideology, no set ideology, other than maintaining power and control. Really, that's all it's basically all you can chalk it up to. Lastly, how all this ties into the Deutro Affair. You see, in that first video about the Deutro Affair, I pondered, I'm just like, how can people be so depraved, so just disgusting, so vile? You see, these intelligence agencies, there's a lot, they're involved in, of course, drug trafficking. These intelligence agencies, you'll also notice that they are involved in a lot of suspect activities. Satanism, think of Michael Aquino, another sick fuck. And they're also involved in, of course, drug trafficking, child trafficking, sex trafficking, pedophilia. You see, unfortunately, there's a very robust market for sex trafficking and also for blackmail material. I think really anyone that's involved in a lot of these federal agencies, intelligence agencies across the world, they have some very depraved material on them. They use these agencies, they've got dirt on each other, probably videos of them, doing some horrific things to children. And they use this, to keep everyone in line. They don't want anyone going rogue, spilling the beans. They want to keep everybody in line. Basically they say, if you go public, if you say anything, we've got this on you. If they don't outright have you killed, And you see also, another interesting thing I've been reading on as well is a book called Programmed to Kill. And it talks about this Deutro Affair. Anything that these intelligence agencies do, it's like anything that the elites do. It will accomplish multiple objectives. You see, a lot of these young girls that survived the Deutro Affair and went on to give their testimony to investigators in the X dossiers, a lot of the psychologists, who were there whenever they were giving their interviews, they died basically easily. They could tell that these young women had either multiple personality disorder, MPD, or they had dissociative identity disorder. And in that book, Programmed to Kill, I haven't read all of it. See, it's really scatterbrained, and here, like I said, the last month, I've had very little time to do any research. I've had very little time to do anything other than, driving 6-7 days a week and lifting weights and just going through the motions, But in this book, he theorizes, that these intelligence agencies, they're great. And see, MPD or DID is induced by severe, horrible trauma induced on a kid at a very young age. And with these disorders, they could basically, it's a form of mind control. And, of course, the CIA, these intelligence agencies, they are very interested in this field. So that's another reason why a lot of this depraved, absolutely horrific shit happens. Is there anything else? Anything else? Anything I've forgotten? Yeah, like I said, I'd like to encourage people to look into this for yourselves, because after all, I don't have a lot of time. There's stuff I can miss. The more of us that we have looking into this, the more awareness there is, the more information we can glean. We can look back at how these intelligence operations worked. Operation Gladio. And there's Operation Phoenix. There's a lot of fuckery, for lack of a better word, that we can learn from. And although we are 30 years removed from Operation Gladio, I certainly believe that a lot of the tactics, a lot of the subversive ploys that these intelligence agencies used, they're still in effect today. They're still running the same fucking plays 3 decades later, although, there's different wrinkles to it, you could say. With the advent of the internet, online culture, all these things. I think it's important, though, for us to look at this, and it's like I said, as a way of us, crafting some sort of resistance. Although, like I said, I'm not an expert on this. I don't know. But I think it's worth noting, and it's worth considering. And maybe it'll help, like I said, craft some sort of plans of resistance. Anyways, this video is long enough. Thank you all for watching. Bye-bye.